Welcome back to another week here on MWO Sports. Ryan Drury. I'll be joined as always by Clarkey and Steve Sabourin. We have a great show this week. Legendary voice of the Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen, will join us to talk all about Maple Leafs opening night. Big win in overtime over Montreal. The season coming up, how they're going to do, what changes might be made at the end of the season. If they stumble again, will Freddie Anderson still be the goalie? And we'll dig into his ownership of the Green Bay Packers as well. Joe Bowen coming up next here on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. Ryan Drury alongside Clarkey and Steve Sabourin. We're very pleased to be joined by a great special guest right after the Leafs opener of the season. Radio play-by-play voice and legend of the air when it comes to the Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen joins us. Joe, how are you?
You forgot about being owner of the Green Bay Packers.
I left that out, yes.
How many shares do you own?
Well, I control 5.
Okay.
Really?
All of my sons have a share. I have a share. So we consider ourselves a controlling interest. The problem we have is when I phone Jerry Jones to see if I could borrow the airplane for a couple of days, he never phones back, which I find very rude now that we are all in the ownership group. But that's another problem that I'll get by without worrying about the Leafs and everything else.
That's unacceptable. I mean, Jerry should show some respect here. That's ridiculous.
Totally unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable.
Let's talk Leafs, and then we'll definitely touch on the Packers because it's going to be a big weekend for them and Aaron Rodgers' legacy in terms of winning Super Bowls potentially. But let's start with the Leafs. What did you make of the opening game, Joe? I mean, Montreal controlled, I would say, probably the first half of the game, and then the Leafs started to pick up the pace a little bit and got it figured out, managed to squeak out a win. Entertaining game, really good stuff. What was your impression of how the Leafs played on night one?
I hated it. I hated every minute of it because there was no one in the building.
Yeah.
And what we've gone through in 2020 and the opening that Taylor Dean and the staff at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment did to have numerous members of police, firefighters, the first responders, people at the hospitals to introduce the guys there wouldn't have been a dry eye in the joint. There really wasn't. And I don't think that TV did it justice by not showing all of it. But having said that, a Saturday or an opening night on a Wednesday night, Montreal, Toronto, and no matter where it was, whether it's in Montreal or in Toronto, the building is electric. And we missed that. We desperately missed that. I think the players would say to a man that they missed it. I know I did. I think the viewers certainly would have been that way, and our listeners as well. But then when you got by that, what they tried to do to emulate crowd noise and do what they could, I thought they did a marvelous job. And the game was a hell of a game. It really was. I mean, there were mistakes. There was a comeback. There was lots of problems for both coaches to mull about the next day. A great win for the Maple Leafs and an exciting ending. And there wasn't 18,000 in there to enjoy it. And that, I think, was just a travesty, but we got no control over that.
Joe, you have the tendency, I know, because I've sat beside you up there for quite a few games.
Yeah, and you weren't very good either, Kris. I got to admit that. We've made a major league improvement for years since we got rid of you.
Yeah, I know. I've told the story, though, about the out-of-town scoreboards with Jimmy in the box. So that's been exposed, Joe, just so you know. But anyway, how weird was it? Like, I'm sure the player, you have a tendency to project your voice a little bit. I'm sure those players could hear you, don't you think?
I don't know if they could because the crowd noise that they pumped in, and it was in the bowl, was, it didn't react to what was going on. Maybe a little late. Maybe they juiced it up when there was a play or something like that. But it was still enough crowd noise in there that I mean, first off, I haven't been able to ask any of them because we can't get near them. So I really can't answer that. But I don't believe that it would have. Just from what I heard in my headsets and and that sort of thing. So I think, Kris, that it was pretty much status quo. But I mean, the TV guys were next to us, so if I didn't hear from them, I guess maybe it was okay.
We talked about energy in the arena, Joe. The players seem to, I guess, create their own energy at times. Can you give us a little, I guess, breakdown about the first game for the new Leafs, Mr. Simmons and Jumbo Joe?
Well, Steve, and Bogosian and Brody and Barabanov too made a big time block. Didn't play a lot of minutes. It's obviously it's a project and it's under construction. I don't know if Joe Thornton looked as comfortable as I'd hoped he would look, but I think Jimmy Vesey did. I think that obviously everybody is touting how the game turned because of something that the Leafs have never really had in the last couple of years, and that was push back. And it wasn't so much that it was a response to a play as much it was Steve Simmons going to the front of the net and hacking and whacking and then offering the challenge. And the challenge was met by Sherratt. And unfortunately for the Canadians, the Leaf player came out on top of all of that. And then I think more so was his bellowing to the bench, let's go. And this team hasn't had that. I mean, Clifford, yes, maybe a little, but, once in a while. And I don't know how often that, Wayne Simmons is going to be asked to be the Wayne train and go through somebody like this. But it's there. It's there for people to see. It's there for the opponents to see. It's there for the opposing coaches to see. And it's something that, and it's an untold thing on a bench. It really is. And if you get your nose rubbed in it and no one pushes back, well, your bench sinks. And I don't care how talented you are and how offensive gifted you are. If you don't push back, this game, and I've said this many, many times, is that the oldest person involved with this team, Conn Smythe, came up with the great line, if you can't beat them in the alley, you can't beat them on the ice. And it's not as much of an alley anymore. It's a little narrower, and things don't go on in there as often as they used to. But when you get your nose rubbed in it and you get pushed, you better have somebody on that bench that is capable and, more important, willing to go out and push back. And so Bogosian, Muzzin, and now Simmons, and to an extent Joe Thornton, are people that will push back. You don't want Nylander, you don't want Marner, you don't want Matthews. That's not the group that has to do that. And I think we saw last night that Wayne Simmons is quite prepared, willing, and obviously able to push back. And that's something, when you're playing this team that they played last night, instead of 3 times, 10 times, you better have some pushback somewhere along the line because you're going to get pushed.
Hey, Joe, what do you think of the new look defense? I know last night we only had Brody and Bogosian, I guess, as the newcomers in the lineup. But not only those guys, but the depth that this team seems to have on defense now, I think is a lot better.
Kris, when's the last time, and you were with us many, many years, when the first pick, your first round pick, boy, this guy's got to play. He's got to be in the lineup. We got to get this guy. This guy really looks good. Well, they got 2 first-round draft picks in Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren. No one's over concerned that, they got to play.
Right.
No, they have to develop. And when you have that kind of depth, especially with the guys who are, Sandin was the best defenseman in the World Junior Tournament 2 years ago. And then the kid from Finland is the best defenseman in this year's tournament, and the Leafs have him as well. So it's the old adage about not pushing people, but letting them develop and making sure they're ready to make the step to be a part of an organization or be a part of a defense. I mean, playing defense in the National Hockey League, other than playing goal, is the most difficult position in the league. And you really need to have some time in the minors and the American League to develop. Now, unfortunately, this COVID stuff is really going to have an issue with people developing at that level and how many games they're going to be able to play and everything else. Never mind with the OHL and major junior hockey is going to have to go through, and your kids that you have already drafted that are going to get to play. So having said that, when I can never remember a Maple Leaf team not really overly concerned that their number one picks over the last 2 years are not playing, or not necessarily the last 2 years, but 2 of the last 3 years are not playing. And I think that says a world of what their depth is like. And you've probably got a kid in Lehkonen who's ahead of them because he's older and more mature and has played at an elite level, even though it was in the KHL and not the NHL.
Don't go anywhere. We will be right back with more with legendary voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen, right here on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you as always by coolbet.co. Ryan Drury still hanging out here with Clarkey and Steve Sabourin, and we are very pleased to still be hanging out with the legendary voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen. Now, Joe, I know in talking about this team, you bring up a number of changes, and goaltending might end up being one of them. I mean, Frederik Andersen, ever since they acquired him, I think he's actually been pretty good. I don't think he's among those roadblocks in the playoffs that you alluded to earlier. Do you think that he is the man to take the Leafs all the way to the promised land, or do you think in a contract year where he's making $5 million, he could eventually ask for more? Do you think he is the guy that will ultimately still be the Leafs starter next year and beyond?
This 56-game season is going to dictate that. Both parties, at least at this point, have said they're not going to negotiate until season is over. I mean, you have to remember, Vasilevsky was pretty good with Tampa Bay, but hadn't won either. They'd gotten beaten out. They got beat out first round a year ago, or 2 years ago now, I guess. So everybody goes through this, and until you have done it, you're still kind of on the outside. Now, you look at a kid like Billington. Right now, he's kind of on a bit of a bubble, and we're not really too sure, but he caught lightning in a jar, and St. Louis Blues went to the final and won the whole thing, and he became, a big thing, and obviously became a very rich man because of it. I mean, if you look at the statistical stuff over the years and over Frederik Andersen's career, it's impressive enough to say that he is among the elite goaltenders. Is he in the top 3 or 4? Maybe not. Is he in the top 10? Yes, he is. If he won 2 or 3 rounds in the playoffs, would that accelerate his? Yes, it would. If he won the Stanley Cup, would he really be in for a big pay raise? Yes, it would. So, I mean, his side is probably taking the chance that they're going to be very successful and go through this, and he'll get the big payday. But, he has to play better. He had a .909 save percentage a year ago. That reminds me a lot of Chris Clarke playing goal.
No,
that was 609. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I, of course, in the Unionville Men's League was way up there, probably about 725. So, yeah.
Hey, you know what? Drury asked my question because, of course, I wanted to talk about goaltending. And I remember sitting beside a young Joe Bowen. Well, maybe not that young. Back in 1990, when Sergio Momesso took a slap shot from outside the blue line and beat Alan Bester. And I'll never forget what Joe called him when we went to the break. Anyway, those things stick with me. They probably don't stick with Joe because he's seen a lot more games than I have. But question...
It probably wasn't very complimentary.
No, it wasn't. And I'll never forget it.
But I'll tell you what, Chris, we had a lot smaller goaltending equipment on then, and I probably should have been a little more complimentary, or at least empathetic, if nothing else, because Lord knows you and I have let things in from further away than that.
Yes, we have. But my question is, if it's not Freddie, and I've been critical of Freddie on the show, who is it? Like you can't just assume Jack Campbell or Aaron Dell or whoever is gonna jump in there. That's my question.
Great story. It'll be a great story. I'll play for the minimum. And at 70 years of age, by the time we win the Stanley Cup, I'll be part of hockey lore. I mean, even the owner of the New York Rangers played in a Stanley Cup playoff game. I mean, what the hell? Why shouldn't I be a part of it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I mean, they've added some depth with Aaron Dell. Jack Campbell is maybe every bit as good as Billington. Right? We don't know till he runs with the ball and gets to do stuff. I know he's a quality individual. Great. He was the World Junior Hockey Tournament #1 goalie. He's got some track record. You don't know until you are entrusted and entrusted with the job of being the #1 guy. It's a strange position. It's the Hamburglar. How was he? Terrific. The next year, couldn't stop his ass with his thumb. So, I mean, having said that, I mean that you don't know, and until you're entrusted with it, who knows? Why was Frederick Anderson better than the guy in Anaheim who they decided to keep and send Anderson to Toronto? Until you are entrusted with the job of being the #1 guy, and I think in the fact that it is a contract year, the fact that it is a smaller season, a smaller sample, 56 games, if things go south, other people in this organization are going to get a chance to run with the ball. And that's not just with the Toronto Maple Leafs. What happens if Carey Price goes south? Well, they went and got Jake Allen, thinking there was going to be an 82-game season, and he was just going to kind of spell him. But if things go south, or God forbid, an injury, he's going to get a chance to run with the ball. And, Jack Campbell, I think, would think, and certainly management thinks, otherwise they wouldn't have traded for him, that he's capable of doing that if that unthinkable thing happens.
Joe, a weird situation with the way the divisions are set up. Looking at the North Division, of course, who is going to be the toughest challenge for Toronto this season?
Well, other than Ottawa, the other teams were like separated by 5 points. So you throw a name out for me. They're all capable of being, great teams and good teams and being right there at the end. I mean, it's going to be a cavalry charge down to the end, and it's going to be very interesting to see. God forbid you get into a losing streak, or God forbid that you get into a lot of key injuries, which I think this is the schedule. I think is just great. You guys are Chris, you're old enough. You guys are way too young to remember the original 6 when they played Montreal 12 times. They played Detroit 12 times. There was a lot of hate on, to the point where if you were on the train going to Detroit and one team was in one car and the bar car was in the middle and the other team was you didn't go because you didn't want to see these guys because you were arch enemies and hated each other. Well, by the time all of these 10 games with the Montreal Canadiens gets done and 9 with the teams out west, it's going to be, as Orval Tessier used to say, a lot of animosity.
Joe, you you trend on Twitter a lot, mostly because it's the Leaf fans' hatred towards some of the play-by-play guys that are out there. I'm sometimes one of the ones that lead the charge, I must admit. However, what do you like better? Like, I would imagine.
I don't care what I like better. It's my bank manager that likes TV.
I get it, but you know what? Like, TV is a lot more work, so that's why you get paid more, right? It is more work.
No, it's not.
It is. Okay, when time do you have to get there for a TV game compared to a radio?
I get there for the same time for both.
Do you? Okay.
For what I'm doing, It's the same thing. I mean, it's probably more work for the color commentator for TV because you don't control what's going on. When I do radio, I'm the talent, I'm the producer, and I'm the damn director. And
I produce the games. Don't tell me you produce the games.
You pushed the buttons and you turned on the mic.
I told you when to take a break.
Oh, yeah, thank you. No, but I heard that. Now we have people talking on our ear from the station.
Oh.
Your job was done.
Okay.
But so you decide, and Ralphie and I decide what we're going to talk about.
Sure.
But if it's TV, the producer in the truck has got a lot of visuals and he's got all kinds of things that he wants to get in. And so you react to what he's going to do when the game stops. But I'm not in charge of when the game stops. Mm-hmm. I'm in charge of when the game's on. And so it really is not a great deal of difference. Now, do you do the game differently? Yes, you do. Because obviously people can see where the puck's on the left wing side or whatever. So you don't have to be as graphic. And certainly when I worked with Harry Neal, I encouraged him to be more involved when the play was on, to finish his thoughts or to add something. And when we're doing radio, you try to, Ralphie tries to make sure that when the game's on, I'm trying to describe to somebody who's sitting there who can't see where it is and what's going on. And then he's going to fill in the blanks when the play is stopped. So that's the difference. But obviously, if you're doing TV and you're talking to 2 or 3 million people, as opposed to radio, which wouldn't have that big of a thing, you get more money, and my bank manager thinks that's a hell of an idea.
So who'd you piss off?
What's that?
Who did you piss off? Why aren't you on TV?
I pissed you off, and you got me fired.
No, not true. You were on TV when I was there.
Oh. Well, I honestly don't know, Kris. And to be honest with you, no one has ever told me. When the Leafs were sold and the conglomerates took over, and then the big deal that Rogers made, no one ever phoned me and told me, okay, you're gone because of, and it was just, okay, well, going, I love the term, and I'm sure that every lawyer has got going in a different direction.
Right. I had this discussion.
I'm the different direction, and I went in the different direction.
I had the discussion with John Shannon a few months back about, he said you need national guys on the national broadcasts. My argument was, when I was a kid growing up, I knew if the Leafs were in Montreal, we heard Danny Gallivan. If Montreal was in Toronto, it was Bill Hewitt in my time. If the Leafs were in Vancouver, it was Jim Robson. I love that. It was like my guy. And Joe Bowen's my guy. And when the Leafs are playing, I want my guy. I just don't like this national broadcast crap. Anyway, we don't have to talk about it.
The address is provided. I will send you the email, and you can fire off your nasty note. But
I have
at this point, I'm just glad that I'm still doing games, and we'll muddle through it as much as we can. And I really do appreciate long-time serving Leaf fans that get their shorts in a knot, and now that we have all of this social media that they can vent their frustration. I appreciate it, but at this point, it's beyond my control. I'm just happy to do what I'm doing. Jimmy, Ralph, and I have been together for nigh on to 24 years now. Wow. And last night, I think, was my 3,335th game or something like that. I'd like to do this until we have a parade, and I sincerely hope that it's in my watch, but there's no guarantees of that either. So we'll muddle through until, and there'll be a day where I'll sit down and I go, you know what, can't do this anymore. I'm not keeping up. I'm not there. And I'll be the one to know it before others, I hope, because I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Joe, have you ever thought about what you would say in a Stanley Cup clinching moment? Do you have something planned, or is it something that's just going to come to you at the time?
Steve, I think, and I've said this a number of times to people, if you do that, it's going to sound like that. It's contrived. You've written it down. You've got it right in front of you. And that's what it's going to sound like. I felt so bad for the guys from the Chicago Blackhawks when they won the Stanley Cup for the first time since 1961. And they didn't know the puck was in the net, and there wasn't an iconic call. Right? And you went, really? After all that, really? There's going to be that. So, no, I haven't thought about what I would want to say. I've kind of mulled things through my head, what would be nice or whatever. But if it's an overtime winning goal, what the hell are you going to do? What if it's game 7 in overtime? I mean, you're just going to go crazy and whatever pops into your fertile imagination is what's going to be. If you're winning 7-1 in the second period, you might sit down and say, there'd be a nice little note. And you could fire in a nice 4-lettered expletive for everybody else and just end your career right there, and away you went. But no, I really haven't thought what I would say because I think that what I have done over the year for any of the special moments that I cherish have been literally spur of the moment, what came into your head, what dictated what had just happened, and react to what you saw.
And I think that's the best way. And that's the way you've always done it, Bonesy. And I think that, like Clarkey said, that's why Leafs Nation has such an attachment to you. We're chatting with the voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen. Joe, bit of a long-winded question. Earlier this week, I was chatting with Carlo Koliakovo over on TSN 1050, and we were having a chat about Mitch Marner and William Nylander and just some of the narrative around the team over the last couple of years. Big money deals, obviously Marner significantly more than Nylander, but there's this narrative that if the Leafs continue to stumble, or as you said, run into roadblocks, and maybe it happens again this year, maybe they win the cup, that'd be nice. But if they continue to fail, quote unquote, under expectations, there seems to be this narrative that they've got to move one of them. One of them's got to go. They got to blow the core up in some dramatic way. I want to rewind 11 years to 2010 when the Chicago Blackhawks won that Stanley Cup and they beat the Philadelphia Flyers. And a couple of years later, the Flyers did just that. They blew the core of their team up. They traded away Mike Richards and Jeff Carter, two extremely good players. And the Philadelphia Flyers have been swimming around aimlessly ever since. And they've got a good team now, but it did not work out. And they actually won cups elsewhere in Los Angeles together. You look at teams like Pittsburgh, they win that cup in 2009, and then they had a mighty struggle to get back, and then they win 2 more. But they kept that core together. Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Marc-Andre Fleury was still there, although he lost his job. And then you even look at my favorite team, the Washington Capitals. How much did they get kicked around for keeping the core together? They kept them together. They won. I guess in my long-winded question here, do you believe that the Leafs need to do something like that? Or do you think that this is the core that they have to keep together and you move pieces in around until you finally hit a jackpot?
Well, you're absolutely correct. That was very long-winded. Is there another question, Kris? Who is this guy? What was that all about?
Sorry,
Howard. It's the Howard Berger of MWO Sports.
No, come on.
Do you need the window seat? Are you going to be okay? Ryan, here's the thing, and this is the toughest question in sports. And let's go to the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears this week decided they're going to keep their general manager and their coach, despite what has gone on with that long-suffering franchise, because they believe that having continuity and the same direction and the trust in the people that are running it to correct, even though they've been a part of the problem here, right? So that was ownership's decision. That is a difficult thing for an owner or ownership in the case of the Maple Leafs, because it's a boardroom, not just Harold Ballard sitting in his office. Do you have the patience And do you trust the people that are doing what you've asked them to do at the highest level? And at this point, you can look at, how about the core of the Tampa Bay Lightning? Same question. And you're talking about the Flyers, about how they changed things and haven't been the same. Well, why wasn't the core of the Tampa Bay Lightning blown up, especially after 2 years ago when they were dismissed in 4 straight games? Because they were, without question, the Stanley Cup favorite, correct? So that didn't happen, and management said, let's come back in a week. Let's not make any, hackneyed decisions right now. Let's think about this and take a deep breath and see where we are and everything else. And that will happen. Then you have to, at that point, decide, how big's your core? How big was Tampa Bay's core? Well, let's start with the 2 guys, right? The 2 number 1 picks, Hedman and Stamkos, and then they added people around that. The Leafs probably have a larger core of prominent picks that they've made or trades that they've made in the case of John Tavares. So that, I think, will be a situation. If the core will not get blown up, it might get tinkered with. And that's entirely up to, Kyle Dubas and Brendan Shanahan and the coaching staff to think if they need to do that. Do they need to make a big splash with a huge defenseman because we can maybe give away one of the forwards? Yeah, but that's a long meeting in the boardroom to decide that. And we'll wait and see. But that's the fun about owning a team, even if you're not, or in charge of a team. And I'm sure that everybody that's involved with all of the fantasy leagues goes through the same decision-making process. And how many of those clowns are actually employed by NHL teams?
Hopefully none of them. Fantasy is a dangerous game. I'm glad I'm not the general manager of my favorite team. I'll tell you that right now. Speaking of owning a team, Joe, you are a diehard Green Bay Packers fan. Our viewers can see it. I want to know, how did you fall in with the Cheeseheads? When did your fandom start? Who were some of your favorite players when you were young? And what do you think of the team this year? Big game coming up this weekend against the Rams.
Well, like most kids, you attach yourself to a team that's winning. So we have a myriad of New England Patriot fans, little guys running around. Yeah.
Sorry.
Johnny come latelys, front runners. At any rate, when I was young, the Green Bay Packers and Vince Lombardi were winning the NFL championships, and then, of course, the first 2 Super Bowls. And I have brainwashed my kids that you have to, and like, it's like being a Leaf fan. You know what? I grew up a Toronto Maple Leaf fan as a kid. I apparently was listening to Bill Barilko score the winning goal in 1951 when I was a couple of days old. But I did get to watch the 4 Stanley Cups in the 60s. So I was a Leaf fan then. But if you're a real sports fan and you attach yourself to a team, you're going to be disappointed more than you're going to be exhilarated by the thrill of victory. And when the Packers finally turned things around, when Brett Favre and company arrived on the scene and my kids are in the basement and I'm in tears watching them win the Super Bowl for the first time since my favorite player, Bart Starr and Jerry Kramer and Ray Nitschke and Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor, I said to them, cherish this, because you may only see this once, maybe not, maybe you'll never see it again in your lifetime, but you can't stop being a fan if you have attached yourself to that team. And so countless number of Leaf fans have cried on my shoulder and been upset and pissed and everything else about what's going on. I can't stand these guys anymore. Oh, they're playing tomorrow night. Let's go. Well, you gotta hang in there. You gotta hang in there, because when it happens, and I hope it's in my tenure, and it will happen, it is going to be so sweet. And I'm also a Boston Red Sox fan. And I mean, 1918, they had won the World Series since 1918. And when they did, guys were taking their radios to the cemetery because Grandpa and Dad were right here. And I want them to hear the Red Sox beat the Yankees to go to the World Series. And then I mean, that stuff just brings tears to my eyes, and it just swells you with what being a fan is all about. I mean, you can't just, you know what? Yeah. You know what? That's too bad. Tom Brady's left. Yeah. I don't want to be a Patriots fan anymore. How about them Bills? Oh, yeah. Let's go. You can't do that, because then you're not a fan. You're a Johnny-come-lately, and good for you. Hang in there, and I hope it all works out for you. But when you are a real fan of a team, and my kids have followed me, although I did have them as Red Sox fans, and now they've gone over to that Blue Jay side. But Notre Dame Fighting Irish, Green Bay Packers, Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll bleed those colors as long as we can, and we'll celebrate their successes, and we will cry deeply about their losses. We've gone through one this year with the Fighting Irish, but they had to get there to lose. And we are hoping that the Green Bay Packers are going to be a Super Bowl champion, and we can really enjoy that. And even in this COVID thing, and sometimes we have to do it like this on a Zoom with all of us being a part of it. But hopefully by February, maybe we can actually all get together and really celebrate.
Joe, just before you go, you talked about your kids, and I just want to ask one last question, and it relates to junior hockey now and how a lot of these kids are losing out on a big year of development. It hits home with you. Your son David, drafted by the Sudbury Wolves. How has he been able to keep going? And is he playing? Is he getting any practice in? What's happening with David?
Well, Rob Mazuka, who is the commissioner of the NJOHL, Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League, has done a marvelous job up there. Right now, because the province has completely shut down, he's not playing. But they started up before Christmas. They changed a lot of things. There was no body contact, as in body checking. All of the players had to wear full plastic face shields. They played 6 games against the same opponent, then took a week off, tested again, and then played another opponent the same amount of games, and they're planning on doing that again once they get back, so that those kids are at least getting on the ice and playing. The OHL, I know in Quebec, the government subsidized the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League to allow them to get going, which is why they were playing. The OHL, I don't think is going to get any government support. I could be wrong, but they can't play without people in the stands. They're paying too much money. The NOJHL is playing because I'm still paying for David to play. So parents are putting money in, and there are owners, but they're not taking the big hit the way owners would be at the major junior level. So they've done a great job. I feel terrible. Never mind at that level. I mean, the minor midget year, when all of these kids are going to get drafted into the OHL, they're not playing at all, and it's horrible. And we have the two-sided coin going on, because down south of the border, stuff is going on almost normal, and that's being allowed. And yet here, we've decided that it's going to be a lot more restrictive, and it's way above my pay grade to say what's right and what's wrong. And I know how terrible this whole pandemic has been, and how many families have lost dear ones and been impacted by it, whether it be, health-wise, or whether it's been just financially and everything else. it's a tough thing to do. And hockey and recreation has been shunted down the list quite substantially to how things are going to come back. So God hope that this vaccine is going to actually get us back to some kind of normalcy. But I will say this, I sincerely hope someone pays for this somehow for having this started. And that hasn't yet been broached very often and elsewhere. And for the life of me, I don't understand why.
Well said, Joe. And you're right. It's been a really tough year for sports and for kids, especially, like you said, never mind junior age players. Hopefully we're on the other side of this sooner than later with vaccines arriving. So we really appreciate you doing this, Joe Bowen, legendary voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I also hope that someday we're able to hear you calling a Leaf Stanley Cup championship. It would be a magical thing. I think it's something you deserve. I've listened to you since I was a little kid. I know Clarkey would love it and Leafs Nation would love it, and they want you to be the guy to call it. So we really appreciate you doing this and joining us on the show, Joe. Have a great season.
Thanks, Ryan and Kris and Steve. It's appreciated. After listening to me all these years, how the hell could you not be a Leaf fan, Ryan? Jeez, Murph.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm sorry. I fell in with the wrong crowd.
Right away, I looked at you and said, that's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, right there.
Oh, well, fair enough. I don't know. I will just retort briefly by saying that the Capitals eventually treated me pretty well. I had a fun summer.
Feel free to edit that part out if you want, but that's I'm still saying.
We'll go ahead and keep it. We make fun of Clarkey quite a bit. It's about time somebody ribbed me, so we can keep it. Fair enough. Best of luck with the Packers this weekend too, Joe. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much to legendary voice of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Joe Bowen, for joining us here. We will be right back with our wagering expert from CoolBet, Kris Abbott, and we're going to switch things up a little bit this week. We're going to have a little bit of fun. Hockey season underway. We're going to do a little fantasy draft here coming up next on MWO Sports, brought to you by CoolBet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to wrap things up here on MWO Sports. Ryan Drury still alongside Clarkey and Steve Sabourin, and we welcome in our wagering expert from CoolBet, Mr. Kris Abbott. Kris, how are you?
I'm good, boys. How are we all doing? NHL underway. It's absolutely crazy. Some teams were a little more ready to go than others, but I'm glad it's back, and I'm really looking forward to the point where we get fans in the stadium again whenever that happens.
God, so am I. It's so exciting to have hockey back on. It's fantastic. And with that in mind, we thought we would switch things up a little bit this week. We thought we'd do a fun little fantasy draft where the four of us will compete against each other for the year. We'll keep track of the stats. Let's do it now. We'll just go goals, assists, wins, shutouts. We'll draft 3 players and a goalie each. And in my number generator here, we've decided where we're going to slot in this snake draft, and Mr. Steve Sabourin will have the first overall pick. So Mr. Sabourin, go ahead and start us off.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You know what? Just in the spirit of being competitive, I'll take Austin Matthews.
Wow.
Take the Leaf guy off the table and let the 3 of you duke it out.
Wow.
Unbelievable. A shock first pick. Kris Clarke at number 2.
Steve knows he has the 8th pick too, right? Anyway, I got to go with Connor McDavid. It's a toss-up in my mind between Draisaitl, McDavid, and McKinnon, but I'm going to go with the guy who's the best player by far in my mind in the league, Connor McDavid.
There you have it. Connor McDavid, number 2 overall. Controversy already. Mr. Abbott, you are picking 3rd.
Well, you guys know I'm from the East Coast, so I got to take Nate Dogg with my first pick.
I'm not shocked. Nate McKinnon off the board. That leaves me to pick back-to-back, and I am happy, very happy, to take Alexander Ovechkin. He is going to lead the league in goals again. I will take Ovi, number 4, and since I'm going back-to-back, I got to take Mr. Draisaitl from the Edmonton Oilers. I think Draisaitl Ovechkin is going to win me this league alone. And now we bump back to Mr. Abbott, coming back up the other way in the snake.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is where it gets a little bit tough. I was just gonna. There's a player I was gonna take, but he has a. Okay, I'm gonna go with Patrick Kane.
Patrick Kane, not a bad pick. He's the main man on the Blackhawks. We go back to Mr. Chris Clarke to add to Connor McDavid.
Okay, I'm going to go off the board here and pick my first goaltender, Vasilevsky.
Andre Vasilevsky, the Vezina winner from a couple years ago, off the board. Steve Sabourin, back-to-back picks now.
Oh boy. That's a good question. Well, let's go with. Yeah, you know what? We're going to go a little, as Clarkey said, off the board. I'm going to go with Eichel and Aho.
Wow, Jack, the Eichel Tower and Sebastian Aho from the Carolina Hurricanes. That is back-to-back for Mr. Sabourin. Clarkey, your third pick.
I will go. Well, looks like I'm going to. I didn't plan on doing this, but my second Tampa Bay Lightning, Braden Point.
Nice, not a bad pick at all. Mr. Abbott, your third pick.
So many good options out there, right? Seeing I've already got Nate, let's take his buddy Sid. I'll go with Sidney Crosby for my last pick.
That's not terrible. Me back to back. I will further the controversy and I will pair up two of the NHL's greatest rivals of all time, the countrymen. I will take Yevgeny Malkin. And now I need a goaltender, and I will take last year's Vezina winner. I will take Connor the Wall Hellebuck.
That is a bold choice, bold. Taking Malkin. Malkin is bold.
Malkin is bold, but he is good, and when he's healthy, he rolls. Mr. Abbott, you need a goaltender, and that is it.
Until I saw the way he played against the Islanders on opening night, I would have taken Igor Shesterkin, but absolutely terrible. So I am going to go with Jacob Markstrom of the Calgary Flames.
Nice.
I like
nice
that
pick. Very good. Mr. Clarke, you need a goaltender, as does Mr. Sabourin to wrap up
I have
draft.
A goaltender. I have a
Yes,
goalie,
you do.
buddy.
Sorry, you have Vasilevsky.
That's okay.
You can do whatever you like.
So I've never been in a draft without a Maple Leaf.
No.
Now Austin's gone.
Don't do it.
I know there's a lot of good players out there.
Take Brad Marchand.
Thornton's going to have an impact.
I'm not taking
Don't do it.
Brad Marchand. That's for sure. He's not going to be a Leaf. You know who I think is honestly going to have a monster year, and I'm going to pick him. Oh, gosh.
Wild Bill.
Willie Nylander is my last pick.
As Jeff O'Neill says,
a terrible pick.
Bill Nye, the wrist shot guy, is on Team Clarke. Mr. Sabourin, to wrap up our little draft here, you need a goaltender.
Yeah, goaltender. So wins and shutouts, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and Alan Bester is not available.
We've already talked about Alan Bester with Joe Bowen earlier today.
Is that right?
Yes, we did.
The circle of life.
You know what? Just because, Freddie Anderson.
Oh,
wow. Mr. Sabourin and Clarkey leaning on the Leafs.
I only have one. He's got two.
Steve, if you don't finish dead last in this pool, I will give you $200.
It is recorded. It's on the air.
But the thing about it is, I've been told by Leaf fans time and time again that this is going to be their year, and they're going to have the scoring punch, and Freddie's going to have a monster year.
I haven't said that.
That's the case.
Yeah, Jack Campbell will be starting goalie in 3 weeks, but that's okay. That's okay. So, Steve, who do you have? Let's recap. Who do you have?
Matthews, Aho, Eichel, and Freddie.
And I have McDavid, Vasilevsky, Point, and Nylander. Abbott?
I didn't know I was supposed to write it down.
McKinnon, Kane, Crosby.
Sid, Nate, Patty Kane, and
Who's your
and
goalie?
Jacob Markstrom. I like my
Markstrom.
team.
I like your team as well. I, of course, like mine better. I have the greatest goal scorer of all time, Alexander Ovechkin, Leon Draisaitl, Geno Malkin, and Connor Hellebuck. We'll put the teams online. You can let us know who you think has the best team. Kris, real quick, who's going to win the NFL matchups this weekend?
Oh boy, it's gonna be fun. How long do I got? For wins, I like the Packers to win. I like the Bills to win. I like the Chiefs to win. They're all favorites. I think Tampa Bay wins in the late game on Sunday.
Nice.
I do. I think
Things are going too well for the Bills. I don't think they're going to do it.
That's a close game. I mean, the spread is only 2.5, but Lamar's never played in the cold weather like he's about to play in. So I do think there is something to that. And I think the Bills' run defense might have a better chance than the Titans did. Listen, if the Titans weren't so bad last week, they probably win that game. So I think the Bills' offense will be a determining factor here.
I agree. The Titans were the only team that kind of screwed me over last week. They ruined my 6-game parlay, but that's okay. That's
Stop
why
betting
we continue
parlays.
to bet. I'm sorry. I love a parlay, man. It's my favorite word in sports gambling. He is our favorite gambling expert when it comes to sports. He is Kris Abbott from CoolBet. We really appreciate your insight, buddy. Enjoy the games this weekend and enjoy the hockey, sir.
All right, I will. Thank you so much. There's so much going on, and just betting against the Raptors every chance I get, unfortunately, right now as well. So
yeah, hammer the over.
It's busy times. Things are great. So thanks for having me on, and look forward to seeing how this all plays out for the games this weekend for this draft we've done.
Absolutely, looking forward to it as always. You can listen to this show Friday nights just after 6 on CKNX AM 920 and CKNX.ca. You can find the podcast on all the best podcast apps. Follow us on social media at MWO_sports on Twitter. We're on Facebook as well. You can watch the show Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 on Whiteman TV, our friends who produce this great show for us. And remember to enjoy the hockey. It's back. It's the best time of year. We really appreciate you listening to and watching MWO Sports. And before we go, brought to you by CoolBet.co. Remember, before we go, all the Leaf games are on CKNX AM 920. You can catch all them on the radio and hear our buddy Joe Bowen calling the action. We appreciate you listening to and watching the show.